In 2003, geneticists studying DNA from across Asia found something that made no sense. 16 million men, from China to the Caspian Sea, carrying nearly the same Y chromosome. 1 in every 200 men alive on this planet descended from one single man. Scientists don't name names, but the bloodline explodes outward from Mongolia about 800 years ago. Exactly one man in history fits, Genghis Khan, and the DNA is honestly the least impressive thing he left behind. This is a man who started life eating rats, wearing a wooden board locked around his neck as a slave, and went on to conquer more land in 25 years than Rome managed in 500. The largest connected empire in human history. Nobody has beaten the record since. It wasn't luck and it wasn't madness. It was 8 specific things nobody else on Earth was doing. Some are brilliant, some are horrifying, a couple are both. This is what made Genghis Khan unstoppable. Number 1. The world tried to kill him first. Before the empire, there was a 9-year-old boy called Temujin, watching his father die at a roadside dinner. Dad had stopped to eat with the Tatars, a tribe he'd spent years fighting. Steppe hospitality said guests must be fed. Apparently, nobody said anything about poison. You'd think the clan would rally around the dead chief's family. Instead, they packed up the entire camp and left. A widow and 7 kids, abandoned on grassland where winter hits 50 below. They didn't kill them. That would have been rude. They just left them to starve, which was somehow more polite. Except the family refused to die. They lived on roots, birds, literal rats. And Temujin learned lesson number 1. Bloodline, tradition, loyalty. All of it is a lie people tell you until the day it stops being convenient. Years later, the same clan came back because teenage Temujin was starting to look like a future problem. They locked his neck into a wooden board and made him a slave. One night he swung that board into his guard's skull and ran. Search parties rode right past him. He was underwater in a freezing river, breathing through the reeds. Here's why that matters. Every king and shah he would ever face grew up in a palace, terrified of losing what daddy left them. Fear only works on people with something to lose, and the steppe had already taken everything Temujin had repeatedly before he could grow a beard. You cannot threaten a man like that. You can only slow him down. Number 2. He hired the man who shot him. Fast forward, Temujin is a rising warlord, and in one battle an enemy archer puts an arrow into his horse, nearly taking Temujin with it. His side wins anyway. Afterward, the prisoners are lined up, and he asks one question. Who fired that shot? Everyone knew how this goes in the 12th century. The shooter gets taken apart as a warning. Instead, one prisoner stepped forward. I did. Kill me if you want, or spare me, and I'll put arrows in your enemies instead. Temujin gave the man who almost killed him a job, even renamed him Jeeb. The arrow, little on the nose, but nobody was going to tell him that. Jeeb became one of the deadliest generals of the Middle Ages. And that wasn't a one-off. It was the system. In every other army on Earth, rank was decided at birth. Nobles commanded because their fathers commanded. Every army on the planet was run by its luckiest men. Temujin promoted on one metric. Results: his greatest general, Subutai, was a blacksmith's son who ended up out-generaling everyone. By some counts, he won more campaigns than Alexander and Napoleon combined. Every talented nobody in Asia eventually heard the rumor. There's one army where it doesn't matter who your father was. Genghis Khan built the only meritocracy on the planet, and it quietly drained his rivals of the best men they were too proud to promote. The old tribal chiefs hated it, so he got rid of the tribes. Number 3. He deleted the tribe. For thousands of years, the steppe ran on one operating system: the clan, and it's exactly why the nomads, the best natural soldiers on Earth, never conquered anything. They were too busy raiding each other, and every alliance dissolved the moment one chief felt disrespected at dinner. When Temujin united the tribes in 1206, taking the name Genghis Khan, universal ruler which tells you the size of the plans, he abolished the tribe itself. The nation was reorganized into round numbers: squads of 10, companies of 100, battalions of 1,000, and the Tumen, 10,000. And here's the blade hidden in the bookkeeping. He deliberately mixed rival tribes into the same squads. Your 10 wasn't your cousins, and if one man deserted, his whole squad could be executed for it. Your survival now depended on 9 strangers, and tribal grudges became a luxury nobody could afford. Loyalty stopped flowing sideways to the clan and started flowing straight up. To him, his blood brother Jamaica championed the old way, and after beating Temujin's forces in one battle, celebrated the old-fashioned way by boiling 70 prisoners alive. That was supposed to inspire terror. Instead, his own generals looked at each other and thought, this guy might be an issue. They defected in waves. The final battle was barely a contest, and the old step died with it. 100,000 men moving as one organism, against enemies that were still just arguments wearing crowns. Now the machine needed speed. Number 4. The army that outran its own rumors. A European knight went to war like he was moving house. Warhorse, servants, baggage train, a schedule everyone could see coming. A Mongol trooper went to war with 4 or 5 horses and a bag of dried meat. When one horse tired, he swung onto a fresh one without stopping. 80 miles or more in a day when it mattered. Cities would hear the horde was 10 days out. It was 3 days out. Every report about the Mongols had expired before it arrived. No supply train meant nothing to cut, and no lifeline to defend. And when the dried meat ran out, there was a backup plan that horrified everyone who wrote about it. Open a small vein on your horse's neck, drink a few swallows, seal it, ride on. Disgusting. His enemies thought so too, right up until they starved inside their own walls, while the barbarians outside had a mobile blood bank with a saddle on it. Even the horses were built for this. Small, shaggy ponies Europeans openly mocked, that dug through snow to feed themselves, while Europe's giant warhorses starved waiting for hay. An army twice as fast as information doesn't fight battles. It chooses them against people who are always surprised, and once the fight started, it held the deadliest tool of the medieval world. Number 5. A bow from the future. The Mongol composite bow looks like a toy, barely a meter long. It's built like aerospace equipment. Horn, wood, and sinew, glued and cured for months, bent backward against its own curve so the whole thing is spring-loaded with stored violence. It matched or beat the draw of the famous English longbow at 1/3 the size, and killed at over 200 yards. Now give it to people who were born holding it. Mongol kids rode before they walked. Their toys were bows. A grown horse archer fired at full gallop, timing each release for the split second all 4 hooves were off the ground, so the horse's footfalls wouldn't shake the arrow off target. No army trains that in. You have to be born into it. Then there's the trick that worked for 50 years straight. The Mongols circle, pour in arrows, refuse to fight fair. Eventually, the enemy does the brave thing and charges, and the Mongols run. The enemy smells victory, chases, strings itself out over miles. Then the fleeing riders twist around in their saddles, still at full gallop, and fire backward into their pursuers' faces, while 2 fresh wings swing in from the flanks like a closing door. The proud pursuing army discovers all at once that it isn't an army anymore. It's a queue. Knights called it cowardice. The Mongols agreed it wasn't how honorable war worked. It was how winning worked. But battles were only half the game. The other half was won before anyone drew a bow. Number 6. He knew you before he met you. Years before Mongol riders reached a border, Mongol questions had been there for a decade. Genghis protected and paid merchants better than almost any ruler alive, and the Silk Road quietly became his intelligence agency. Every caravan reported back. Which cities hate their governor, which prince resents his brother, where the granaries are, which passes go unguarded in winter. He never invaded anywhere. He followed a map of weaknesses, years deep. Inside the empire, he built the Yam. Relay stations a hard day's ride apart, stocked with fresh horses, stretched across Asia. The right messenger could cover 200 miles a day. His orders crossed the empire in days. His enemies took months, and in 1220, Jeeb, yes, the guy who shot him, and Subutai, the blacksmith's son, took 20,000 riders on a trip historians still struggle to categorize. Around the entire Caspian Sea, through Persia, the Caucasus into Russia, defeating every army that came out to meet them, mapping everything, then riding home. Europe experienced it as the apocalypse. For the Mongols, it was a scouting report. His enemies fought the army in front of them. He fought the kingdom behind it. And when one kingdom made it personal, the medieval world found out what he was actually capable of. Number 7. Fear traveled faster than his army. In 1218, Genghis Khan tried diplomacy. To his west sat the enormous, wealthy Khwarezmian Empire, Persia and Central Asia. He sent a caravan of some 450 merchants with a message that amounted to, "Let's trade instead of fight." At the border city of Outran, the local governor looked at all that silk and silver and had a genuinely incredible idea. Declare the merchants spies, kill them, keep everything. Genghis stayed calm and sent 3 envoys to the Shah, offering one chance. Hand over your governor, and this stays a misunderstanding. The Shah answered by killing one envoy and sending the others back with their beards burned off their faces. You may have noticed people in this story keep making decisions without checking who they're dealing with. This was the last time anyone made that particular mistake. Genghis dropped his war in China, turned 100,000 riders west, and erased the Khwarezmian Empire. Not defeated, erased. Legend says the greedy governor died by molten silver. Every city got the standard offer: open your gates and live, keep your religion. The Mongols genuinely didn't care how you prayed. Resist and be subtracted from history. The Shah died being chased across his own collapsing empire to a tiny island. Out of land, allies, and heartbeats. And here's the coldest part. The Mongols deliberately let refugees escape. Survivors flooded the roads ahead of the army, carrying the story, growing it with every telling. Fear became his vanguard, and soon cities were surrendering to armies that hadn't arrived yet. Was it monstrous? Yes. Tens of millions died in the Mongol conquests by some estimates. He turned cruelty into arithmetic, and the arithmetic worked. Both things are true, and the scariest part is what the brutality came attached to. The most open mind of the medieval world. Number 8. He stole every good idea on Earth. Nomads can't take cities. That was the rule for 2,000 years. Stone walls just had to outlast the raiding season. When Genghis first hit the walled cities of China, the greatest cavalry on Earth sat outside the gates, roughly as useful as weather. Most conquerors would have gone home. Genghis went shopping. Among his prisoners, his men found Chinese siege engineers, the people who build walls and the machines that break them. Other armies would have executed them. He gave them careers: catapults, sappers, siege towers. Later, Persian trebuchets throwing stones the size of livestock. Within a generation, the nomads who couldn't crack a town became the most advanced siege force on the planet. Same pattern with everything. No alphabet, borrowed ones. No administrators, hired the conquered ones. No banking. The empire's finances went to merchants who actually understood money. Every captured city was sorted twice. Once for treasure, once for talent. His rivals never copied him, and here's why. The knight fought like his grandfather because honor demanded it. Genghis Khan had no tradition to defend. The steppe gave him nothing, so he owed the past nothing. Your weapon worked. It's his weapon now. Every war made him permanently smarter. Every enemy was also a curriculum. 8 things: a childhood that burned out the fear, talent over blood, the tribe deleted, speed that outran information, a bow from the future, spies on every road, terror that arrived before he did, and a mind that treated the whole planet as a library he was allowed to rob. He died in 1227, not in a palace, on campaign, still working. His men buried him in an unmarked grave in Mongolia. Legend says 1,000 horses trampled the ground so the earth would keep the secret. 800 years later, we've found his DNA in 16 million living men, and we still can't find his body. The most powerful human who ever lived is hidden somewhere under the grass of the nothing he came from. More stories like this are already being written. Subscribe, and you'll be there when the next one drops.